In 2012, Gordon visited fashionable Cobble Hill in Brooklyn, New York. Sal's Pizzeria is run by John Esposito, who inherited the restaurant from his parents. John left school at 14 years old to help run the thriving business, which has been in the family since 1970. In the 1990s, the restaurant was so busy, the family took over the building next door and named it Mama Maria's to honor John's mother, who was sick with cancer. Following the sad loss of both his parents, customer numbers dropped, and the restaurant is in trouble. John struggles to understand what's gone wrong because he's kept everything exactly the same.
You're still treating this business as if Mum and Dad are here.
The two sides of the restaurant have different menus and attract different customers, but John fails to act as a manager for them both, preferring to stick to making pizza dough or playing with his 4 kids in the dining room.
The pizzeria and a restaurant are two different animals. That's like the accountant that thought it'd be cool to open a wine bar.
Additionally, the old-school Italian neighborhood has become more fashionable, inviting younger, hipster clientele. John refuses to change his food or his restaurant to reflect the changing customer profile.
Am I gonna put on plastic glasses, get a funky haircut, put an earring in my ear just to accommodate the new people? I'm not gonna do that.
When Gordon arrives, he immediately notices holes in the awning outside Mama Maria's, which he labels as an eyesore. Heading inside, the manager Fabio tells him that the owner cut holes in the canopy and that he can be found next door, running the second of the 2 restaurants. He heads into Sal's and asks why John is behind the counter making pizzas. A shocked Chef Ramsay discovers that he's done the same job since he was just 10 years old. Asking him about the tattered canopy, John suggests that the holes were caused by the wind. It doesn't look like Gordon believes him. They sit down to talk. John explains the history of the 2 restaurants and how they're named after his parents. He blames more competition in the local area for the restaurant's difficulty attracting customers. After hearing about the problems from John, Gordon decides it is time to try the food for himself. Sitting at his table, he asks the waitress what's wrong with the restaurant. She blames a lack of leadership, chaotic management, and John spending most of his time in the pizzeria next door. Chef Ramsay is pleased to see that the pasta is all made fresh on the premises each day, and looks forward to an authentic Italian meal. Chef Joe Fusco looks on nervously as the orders come through to the kitchen, and prepares himself for a negative reaction from the celebrity chef. Server Fran introduces herself and explains that her job is to showcase the desserts. Taking a look, Gordon discovers that the ice cream is actually butter, and the dessert underneath is covered in mold. Manager Fabio assures him that it doesn't matter as they are just for display purposes. Gordon thinks that the stinking, moldy display is disgusting, and he's shocked that Fabio continues to defend it. Chef Ramsay runs to the restroom to wash the mold from his hands. Back at the table, he starts with the tortellini di patate, which is bland, grainy, and tastes frozen. The waitress is asked to check that it's definitely fresh. She is told everything is made fresh, and then frozen, which she reports back to Ramsay. While waiting for his next dish, Gordon looks around, trying to identify a bad smell. Moving a giant plant pot, he accidentally spills water on himself and a couple seated nearby. And it turns out that that was the cause of the stench. Stinking, rotting plant water. Gordon gallantly offers to pay for the young couple's dry cleaning bill. Next, he samples the spaghetti meatballs, made with frozen meatballs, which are dry, rubbery, and disgusting. He sends it straight back to Chef Joe, who is unsurprised, and shares his hatred of the food freezing policy. Finally, Gordon is presented with a greasy margherita pizza, complete with oil slicks. He sends it over to John for a taste test. John tips the rest of the pizza straight into the trash and throws some boxes around in frustration. Heading back to the kitchen, Gordon is introduced to the whole team. Calling out the disgusting food and moldy desserts, he is surprised when John defends the frozen dishes, saying it's not practical to make fresh food daily, and it's what he's always done.
You could get away with it in 1967. It's 2012, John.
Chef Joe complains that he has no control over the menu and is embarrassed by the food he's forced to serve. Unusually, owner John takes full responsibility for the menu, and when Gordon asks a frustrated Joe who's stopping him from making fresh food, John admits that he is the cause. Gordon feels that John is in love with memories and nostalgia, and that the outdated practices must change to reflect the neighborhood. Gordon leaves.
I need a shower. I fucking stink of plant juice.
Clean and dry, Gordon returns to observe the dinner service. As John busies himself making pizzas at Sal's, the Mama Maria's kitchen team quickly sends food out to the dining room. But the diners aren't happy. The food is freezer burned and over-seasoned, and a vegetarian diner has found a bone in her pasta. Gordon goes back to the kitchen to ask John how that could have happened. He admits that there is pork in the tomato sauce. Chef Ramsay speaks to John urgently, but the owner once again says that's how they've always done it, and they've been preparing the sauce for 40 years. As he returns to the dining room, Gordon spots a diner waiting for a friend outside the bathroom.
My friend got sick.
Is he vegetarian?
No.
No.
The customer wasn't vegetarian, but he'd just eaten the lobster tail, which he thought tasted funny. Gordon is not laughing and reports to John that a diner is throwing up. He asks the kitchen to show him what the sick diner was served and is horrified to discover that the lobster smells of ammonia, meaning it has gone bad. Gordon reminds the team that a mistake like that could kill someone. Chef Joe blames the owner once again as he purchases all the produce. Taking a look at the sick diner, Gordon demands that they call an ambulance. John calls 911, then helps himself to a shot of vodka to calm his nerves. As the ambulance arrives, Chef Ramsay takes the decision to shut the kitchen down. Fabio and the servers ask the alarmed customers in the dining room to leave without eating the food on the table in front of them. Branding the evening beyond a disaster, Gordon is horrified at John's lack of leadership and his quiet acceptance of the bad practices he's witnessed. John admits that his parents sacrificed his education so that he could provide help working in the pizzeria, and that's all he knows how to do. He admits he needs help and that he only continues because he needs to support his 4 kids.
Do you think they get enjoyment watching you kill yourself in there? John, come on.
An emotional John tells Gordon that he can't step up and manage the business, but can't vocalize why. He heads inside to close up, but Gordon insists it's time for the owner to go home and get some rest. As a father of 4 himself at the time, Chef Ramsay understands the pressure John is under to take care of his family and wants to help him start afresh the next day. The next morning, Gordon comes in early to take a look through the refrigerators and freezers. He finds bag after bag of frozen pasta, which is freezer burned and has no label or date recorded, along with buckets of frozen sausage skins, ruined chicken, and moldy frozen meatballs. He finds multiple freezers completely full of frozen vegetables, desserts, and yes, yet more pasta. When the team arrives, Gordon shares the good news that the sick diner from the previous evening is out of the hospital and is feeling better, much to everyone's obvious relief. But the happy faces don't last long, as Gordon reveals the contents of the freezers, which are now on display in a disgusting pile in the dining room. A furious Chef Ramsay guesses that the restaurant has enough frozen food to keep them open for the next 12 months, without cooking another thing. Again, Gordon's revelations are met with refreshing honesty from John, who immediately admits that he knew this was going on in his kitchen, and takes full responsibility. The owner explains that he's still buying the quantities of food that were needed when the restaurant was thriving. Chef Joe confirms that he's tried to question John's buying practices, but any change was resisted. In another sad admission, John tells Gordon that the handwritten specials board hasn't been updated since his parents died. Gordon is sympathetic to the grieving owner, but can't ignore his difficulties moving on. An emotional John suggests trashing the board, but Gordon encourages him to keep those items as a memory, but not as part of the business. During another heart-to-heart, John tells Gordon that at 8 years old, he came home from school to serve lunch in the pizzeria instead of eating it himself. He no longer wants to run a failing restaurant and has quite basic hopes: to stop fighting with his wife and to send his kids to camp. John tells Chef Ramsay that his family had shared their high hopes for his visit.
Daddy, Ramsay's gonna fix everything. And we get to spend more time together.
Gordon is obviously moved and commits to helping John, but asks him for a commitment to step out from behind the pizza oven in return. The emotional owner promises to change his ways. The next morning, Gordon is ready to reveal his restaurant makeover. The tattered Mama Maria's awning is replaced by a clean, contemporary, and eye-catching sign. And heading indoors, the updates continue. The dark and dated brown and cream decor has been replaced by bright and vibrant walls with modern art from a local artist. Large photo panels show the original owners, John's parents, Sal and Maria, to keep the restaurant's history alive. and the newspaper-themed tabletops feature photos and articles about the family and their pizzeria, adding another personalized touch to the dining space. There's a fresh, new menu to match. The servers can't wait to sample Gordon's dishes, from rustic bruschetta to delicious mussels, simple margarita pizza, and rich osso buco. But before they do, Gordon also reveals his makeover plans for John, who is asked to remove his branded polo shirt and replace it with a stylish black shirt. Gordon hopes it helps him take on the role of owner that he took over from his father. As the team prepares for dinner service, Gordon reveals that a number of influential bloggers and journalists will be attending the relaunch. John seats the most high-profile diner, a journalist from the New York Observer with 2.4 million readers, and orders start hitting the kitchen. Chef Joe prepares food quickly, but John is distracted and is found chatting at the bar. Gordon pulls him back into line and sends him to deliver the food to the waiting bloggers. Customers are enjoying their food, and John starts to enjoy taking on the running of the restaurant. When the last diners leave, Gordon tells John that he is impressed with his honesty and work ethic. John feels proud of his new restaurant and is determined to show the leadership that his father once showed. As Gordon leaves, he is rooting for underdog John and the team to succeed. In the weeks afterward, John maintained his new role as owner, and the positive write-ups from bloggers and the local press began to cause a buzz in Brooklyn. But was it enough to keep the doors open? The Sal's Pizzeria and Mama Maria's episode of Kitchen Nightmares was a favorite with fans, earning a 6.8 rating out of 10 on IMDb. Viewers were extremely sympathetic towards owner John and his struggle to keep his parents' restaurant and memory alive. John's name comes up regularly as one of the owners that viewers really identified with, and many commented that his grief was the issue, rather than anything lack of care or ability in the restaurant. The episode was filmed in June 2012 and aired in November of that same year. Owner John admitted to finding Gordon's negative comments very difficult to take in the first couple of days of filming. Gordon was with the team for 4 days, and once John had gotten used to Gordon's confrontational style, he wished he'd been able to spend more time with the celebrity chef. For someone who hated any change to his routine, it must have been tough for John to accept the disruption that the filming caused. And speaking of disruption, one of the first things that happened following Gordon's visit was that Chef Joe Fusco left his role at Mama Maria's. Unusually for a Kitchen Nightmares episode, the head chef had received minimal criticism from Gordon during the time he was at the restaurant. The only issue that came up was the lobster, which John took responsibility for, despite viewers suggesting that the blame shouldn't have been entirely placed on him. Chef Joe clearly enjoyed the time he spent with Gordon, posting a throwback photo in 2020, 8 years after filming. Which makes it stranger that he doesn't list Mama Maria's anywhere on his resume. There is a gap in his work history from 2011 to 2015, though he does list himself as a consultant during that period. Most recently, Joe has been executive chef at a series of steak restaurants. His most recent role is at a new restaurant called Prime 36, formerly known as the Warwick Inn. It gets very good reviews, achieving a 4.5 out of 5 rating on Google. Joe posts regular photos of his 2 adorable little boys. We wish him and his family well. Back to Sal's Pizzeria and Mama Maria's. Immediately following the filming of the show, sales reportedly rose by around 10%. And reviews for this time are excellent for the Italian restaurant Gordon had relaunched. They're a little less glowing for the pizzeria. At Mama Maria's, it seems the fresh pasta and veggies were winning over new and old customers alike. Yelp and TripAdvisor are filled with great reviews from happy diners, leading to an extremely impressive 4.7 out of 5 rating. And there were some good reviews for Sal's Pizzeria too, with owners loving both the food and chatting to owner John. It seems that appearing on Kitchen Nightmares drew new customers in, which could have only improved revenue. The pizzeria's Yelp rating reached just 3.2 out of 5, though some of those ratings were affected by delivery issues, and customers complained that the dough had changed. Perhaps Gordon could have helped out more in this half of the business. We're pleased to share that Gordon's visit seemed to help turn John's fortunes around, as both restaurants went from strength to strength over the following years. But did owner John stick to the changes that Gordon implemented? Well, not all of them, no. Let's start with the menu. Or should we say menus? That's right, there were suddenly 2. Diners visiting the restaurant immediately after filming took place reported that they were given one, much shorter menu. But just a few months later, customers were being given 2 different menus, with duplicate dishes listed at different prices. Confusing. An interview after Gordon's visit gives us an explanation for this change. The old customers apparently wanted dishes that were no longer on the new menu. Let's hope that if the old dishes slipped back in, they were at least freshly made and no longer frozen. Viewers loved the changes Gordon made to the interior decor, which gave the restaurant a more modern atmosphere. And they particularly loved the furniture, which they felt was a healthy and progressive way for John to honor his parents while moving into the future. Well, sadly, the decor changed in the years following filming. The tables and local artwork were removed and replaced. And the exterior sign that replaced the tatty Mama Maria's awning that Gordon hated so much? Yes, that's gone too. It seems that the original sign, which was there when Gordon first visited, was returned. Or maybe it was there hiding behind the new sign all along. But the biggest change that Gordon made was pulling John out from behind the pizza oven to act as an owner of both restaurants. Did that one stick? The clue's in the outfit. He went back into the polo shirt, so it should be no surprise to anyone that he went back to his beloved pizza oven, and the job he'd had since he was 10 years old. But in other ways, John did update his business. He started advertising online ordering and free delivery, which must have helped boost business during the COVID pandemic. Unfortunately, Mama Maria's temporarily closed during that time and didn't reopen afterward. John struggled to find a chef to start the restaurant up again, so it remained shuttered, leaving John to focus on Sal's. No problems finding a chef there. So he made it through the COVID downturn and out the other side. But is Sal's open today? Sadly, we can report that the doors were finally closed on both Sal's Pizzeria and Mama Maria's in February 2023. But while it's sad for the customers, it's a happy ending for owner John. 15 years after Gordon's visit, the restaurant isn't closing because it's failing. Instead, John has chosen to retire and spend more time with his family. The last day the restaurant was open was a big celebration. John's daughter posted online encouraging friends to drop by to make the day special. But it wasn't just the family and loyal customers who felt it was an occasion worth marking. The restaurant's last day was also covered by a local news station. An emotional Sal was obviously ready to move on, but finding it hard to say goodbye to so much family history.
I've been in here since I was a kid, and I just want to do something a little different with my life than just make pizzas until the very end.
After the restaurants closed, the two properties were taken over by different businesses. One side became La Bicyclette Bakery, an artisan bakery serving French pastries and bread, along with a great cup of coffee. And the other side became a pediatric clinic. Sal's Pizzeria was one of the oldest restaurants in the series, with a rich family history. John had been part of the business for almost his life, so it's not surprising change was difficult for him. But he did manage to update his menu to appeal to a new, younger clientele, which helped turn his family's fortunes around. Gordon was rooting for him to succeed, and so were the viewers. And he did succeed, keeping the restaurant running until he was ready to move on. We're sure his parents would be proud. We're glad John's time on Kitchen Nightmares was such a positive experience. We wish him and his wife a happy and healthy retirement.